Hey book nerds, welcome to my channel. So today I'm doing the end of the decade book tag. So I saw this tag on Kaz's channel from Cats and Camera, and I just thought that it was a really interesting tag and I really wanted to do it, so I wasn't tagged in it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm also not going to... I'm not going to tag... I might tag people. Yeah, I might tag people, we'll see. But yeah, the basic premise is that you divide the decade into 3 groups and you answer the same questions about each of the 3 groups. So it's kind of like a record of what you've read in the last decade, which I think is a really cool idea. So the first set is 2010 to 2013. So the first question is, how much did you read? I had Goodreads. I got Goodreads in 2012, but I didn't use it like thoroughly, so I would guess I read about 50 books a year if I had to. I've always been a big reader, but I was at school then and I don't know how much I did it in terms of, like, I don't think I would have read then when I read now. So the average in like 2012 and 2013 is 50 books, so I'll guess around that is the number that I read. The next question is, what genres did you read? So I read pretty much exclusively young adult because I was like, how old would I have been? In 2010, I would have been like 15, I think. 15, 16? Yeah. I can do maths, it's fine. It's only my own life. So I read exclusively young adult. I read a lot more fantasy than I do now. I read a lot more contemporary, and I read a lot of young adult thriller type things, which is kind of embarrassing because my taste actually hasn't changed that much, which is really weird to think about. But yeah, you'll see as I go through this list and the questions. So the next question is, who were your favourite books and authors? So this is the bit where I mean it's not really changed, because I read my first Stephen King book in 2012, I believe. I read my first Agatha Christie properly around in the same time period, and I also started reading Courtney Summers, and all 3 of those are still some of my favourite authors. So that's like a little embarrassing. But I also read the House of Night series by PC and Kristen Cast. I loved those. They're like a vampire high school peak Twilight era garbage type book. I read Michael Grant's series. I think it's called the Phase series, but it starts with like Gone and it's like Hunger, etc. About kids who have superpowers and they're trapped in a dome and all the adults vanish. I read a lot of K.A. Applegate as well. I reread some of the Animorph books, but I also started reading her other series. So I read the Everworld series and Remnants, I think is the other one. And finally I read a lot of Sarah Shepherd, which is the Pretty Little Liars books. So I read all of them. I was really into them. And that was probably the thing that started getting me into actual thrillers, which is really interesting. So yeah, so those are the books and the authors that I enjoyed during that time period. I'm also going to throw in Jacqueline Wilson, because I'm still reading Jacqueline Wilson even though I'm technically way too old for her books, but I mean I still read them now sometimes just for the nostalgia. So yeah. The next question is, is there a book that you wish that you'd read during this time period? I don't think so, and I don't think I've got an answer for this for any time period, so I'm probably just going to not answer that question. Because I don't think there's like, there's not really anything that I wish I'd read at the time. And the final question is, do you have any regrets about your reading during that time period? Yeah, several. Well, House of Night is the biggest one. Although, having said that, if I'd not read those books, I would not be able to appreciate how ridiculous they are now. And I read the whole series. I stuck with it till the end. And it just gets funnier and funnier and more ridiculous. So, I mean, I don't not wish that I'd read them. They weren't good, I'll put it like that. No, I know what my regret is. Enduring Love. I read Enduring Love by Ian McEwan. And that is the Terrible, terrible book. I hated that book, and I read it and I shouldn't have. So there you go, that's my reading regret for the time period. So the next time period is 2014 to 2016, I believe, and this is peak uni years for me. This is when I stopped using Goodreads to track my reading, so I did use it, but very rarely, only when I did actual book reviews, so there's like 12 books for each year. It's also Christmas of 2015 was when I first got my Kindle. So yeah, it's kind of the setup for this time period. So again, how much did I read during this time period? I really cannot say. I think this is when I started to approach nearly 100 books a year. So probably around 70 to 80. Certainly in first year, but I don't know when it got later on. I'm assuming I read less. Just because I would have been busy with university and socialising, because I had a lot of groups to hang out with at uni. So yes, and when it comes to genres that I read during this time period, I still had some of the leftovers, so I still read like young adult thrillers. I read quite a lot of young adult contemporaries during this time period, which is weird, and kind of some random sci-fi books. This is when I worked out I didn't really like sci-fi. I read like Ender's Game, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I read that, and I remember not really enjoying either of them and being like, yeah, no, sci-fi is not for me. This is also when I started reading adult thrillers for the first time. So the ones that stick out, I read Before I Go to Sleep by, I think it's S.J. Watson. I'll put it down below. And the Gillian Flynn books, I read all of them. I really enjoyed them. Well, Gone Girl didn't quite enjoy particularly, but you know, you gotta read Gone Girl if you're a thriller reader. So yeah, so I started reading my adult thrillers then and got really, really into the genre. That must have been as well when I read the Helen Grace series, which is a really, really good series by M.J. Arledge. And they were great. I really need to reread those actually, because I've not read them for ages and I really, really enjoyed those. So yeah, those are the books that I can remember sticking out a lot. Again, there's nothing that I wish I'd read in this time period, but I do wish that I tracked it more. That's kind of the reading regret. I regret not actually keeping track of it on Goodreads, because it would be cool to know what I read at uni, and I only have vague memories of the books that I read, even though it wasn't that long ago, but you know, who's got a good memory? And finally we have 2017 to 2019, so this is what I am reading. So yeah, I read about 100, well, I've been reading about 100 books a year. This year I've almost hit 200, which is really, really exciting, so I've almost like doubled the amount I read, which is so cool. Favourite authors are still Stephen King, Courtney Summers, Agatha Christie, definitely. Actually, that would have fit in the last time period, was probably when I got really into Agatha Christie and I binge read all of them. Certainly over the summer months, that would have been what happened. Currently as well, Christina Henry. I love Christina Henry's work. She's one of my favourite authors. I think there's the main ones. I don't think there's any author that I'm missing. And yeah, I read a lot more horror than I used to. I've really worked out what I like in the horror genre, which is great. Again, still read a lot of thrillers, and I'm still trying to work out how to pick good thrillers, because there's so many bad thrillers, and it doesn't matter how excited I am about a premise, it just isn't written well, and then I get really disappointed. Reading again a lot more fantasy now, young adult fantasy, but a different kind than I used to read. As a kid it was more, I guess, stereotypical fantasy, and now it's like darker fantasy or horror with fantasy elements, kind of mixed genres, I guess. And I got back into young adult contemporary, but again, it has to be a specific type of contemporary. I'm very partial to certain tropes and themes, and a lot of it I just not interested in at all. So after discussing those decades, there are two more general questions. So it is, when did you find BookTube and did it change your reading? Did it change your reading? So if this is watching, then it would have been around 2016 where I discovered watching BookTube, and the first one I watched was Hannah from Clockwork Reader. I remember finding her channel and being like, oh, a person talking about books, that's so cool. And then I found many people talking about books and it was great. I started filming BookTube last October, and I think that's one of the main reasons I've actually read so much this year, because it feels like I'm part of a community, and reading it's always been a hobby of mine, and now it feels like less of a solitary hobby, which is really cool. It doesn't require any energy or planning to do, which is great. So it's like best of both worlds. And I think it has definitely changed my reading in terms of I have a lot more contemporary books on my TBR than I would have otherwise. And it's the main reason I hear about books now. So it's definitely changed, maybe not my tastes in terms of what I like, but in terms of being more adventurous and seeking out different things, it's definitely helped with that. And then the final question is, how do you think your reading has changed over the last decade? Well, as we've established, I'm clearly stuck in not maturing at all with my reading. So yeah, no, seriously, it has changed in terms of I now read a lot more adult thrillers. I used to think that adult books were always going to be boring because I only knew, it seems weird, but I only thought of like adult contemporaries and then like horror, and that was all there was to me. Which is not the case at all. I think particularly if you're female, you kind of see all these books with like pink covers and girls kissing, and you think, oh well, I don't want to read that, so I don't want to read adult books. And yeah, that's like a massive generalization, but that's how it was for me. But yeah, I think it has changed in terms of just refining my tastes and a slight maturing. I still like to reread a lot of old favourites from childhood, and I don't know how that will change over the next decade, because that's weird to think about. But yeah, thank you for watching this. Let me know if you've got any comments, if you used to read any of these or anything. I think I am going to tag some people, but it's kind of a light tag, so don't feel pressured because there's not much time left before the end of the year. But I kind of want to know, let me think, whose reading do I want to know about? I want to know about Zach's from Zach Tries to Read. I think he'll have some interesting answers for this if he gets around to doing it. I would like to tag Simone from Me, Simone and I don't know if you're too busy to do it, so if you are, don't worry about it. And I would like to tag Ali from Ali Grace, because her channel's really taken off, her stuff's really good, but I don't know much about her reading tastes beyond her videos yet, so I would really like to kind of know more about that. I think that'd be really cool. So yeah, I'm going to tag those people, but don't feel pressured to do it by any means. Like I said, if you want to do it before the end of the decade or whatever, not that anyone's policing when you do these tags, but you know, I'm going to end it out. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. It helps me out massively. And my battery dying. I hope to see you next time.